most people think about Michael Jordan, they think about his achievements on the basketball court. They think about the iconic buzzer beaters. They think about Jordan dunking from the free throw line.
That's gotta be a 50.
They think about the Shrug after he nailed 6 3-pointers in one half against the Portland Trailblazers. They think about Game 5 of the '97 NBA Finals, a.k.a. the flu game, when Jordan scored 38 points, including the 3-point dagger in the fourth quarter, despite feeling at times like he was gonna pass out. They think about Jordan leaping toward the rim with the ball in his right hand, making like he was gonna dunk it, then switching the ball to his left hand in mid-flight and laying it in off the glass. That's the Michael Jordan I remember. Those are the iconic images Michael Jordan forged for fans during his historic Hall of Fame career. But that's not how everybody remembers him. People who play with Jordan often have less pleasant memories of the greatest basketball player of all time. Many of them, opponents and teammates alike, think about the numerous times Jordan berated, taunted, threatened, verbally humiliated, and even punched people he didn't like. Then there are the people who encountered his arrogance off the court. Many of them remember an arrogant rich guy with a penchant for womanizing and compulsive gambling. And jeans. Don't forget about the jeans. Over the years, a lot of people have come forward with stories that make MJ sound like a complete a-hole. But nobody has a crazier Michael Jordan story than former MTV VJ Lisa Kennedy Montgomery, who viewers of a certain age knew as Kennedy. What stands out for Kennedy when she thinks about Michael Jordan, you ask? Oh, just the time he tried to win a virginity in a game of dice on a men's room floor. And of course, Kennedy's story is gonna sound pretty far-fetched to anyone who isn't familiar with Jordan's penchant for gambling. So let's start there, shall we? Few fans remember this because the NBA and its numerous corporate sponsors did everything they could to downplay it. But Michael Jordan started getting into trouble over his aggressive gambling habits as early as 1991. That year in December, federal law enforcement officers arrested a golf hustler, gambler, and drug dealer by the name of Slim. In Slim's possession, they found a check from Michael Jordan for $57,000. At first, Jordan and Slim said the money was a loan. But later, as a witness in the federal court case against Slim, Jordan admitted the check was actually repayment of a gambling debt. Slim wound up getting 9 years in prison. The discovery of that check was just the beginning. Just 2 months later in February, police learned of Jordan's connections to yet another golf hustler and gambler by the name of Eddie Dow. Dow had been murdered in a home invasion gone wrong in Gastonia, North Carolina. And in the investigation, police found 3 checks from Michael Jordan, totaling $108,000. At that point, the NBA realized they had a problem on their hands. Michael Jordan, the face of the league, was hanging around with some pretty shady characters and gambling away a lot of money. So the league brought in Frederick Lacy, a former federal judge and U.S. attorney, to conduct a probe into Jordan's gambling habits. In March of '92, Jordan was questioned by Lacy. But a few weeks later, big shocker here, Lacy and company concluded that there were no grounds to discipline Jordan because there wasn't even a hint of evidence suggesting he bet on NBA games. Jordan promised he'd stop cavorting with card sharks and hustlers. Quote, "I'm glad to put this behind me," he told the media. "I hope I've learned my lesson," end quote. But Jordan definitely didn't learn his lesson. Just 1 year later, his arrogance put himself at the center of another controversy. This time, he'd been seen gambling at an Atlantic City casino between games 1 and 2 of the '93 Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks. Jordan, of course, defended himself. He said he just wanted to escape the craziness of New York City and that he was back in bed by 1 a.m. and got a full 8 hours of sleep before the Chicago Bulls morning shoot-around. And that he definitely did lose that much money. However, the New York Times reported that 2 different employees at the Bally's Grand Casino said Jordan was there until 2:30 a.m. and that Jordan lost at least $5,000 playing blackjack. 1 week later, another gambler came forward with another crazy story about MJ's gambling habits. On June 3rd, 1993, the LA Times published a report about an upcoming book by a San Diego businessman named Richard Esquinas. The book was titled Michael and Me, Our Gambling Addiction, My Cry for Help. In it, Esquinas claimed that he and Jordan had played over 100 rounds of golf over a 4-year period, and that over one 10-day golf binge, Jordan ran up a debt of $1.2 million, which he then played down to $908,000, bargained down to $300,000 before eventually paying $200,000. The NBA once again hired Frederick Lacy to investigate. In the meantime, David Stern bent over backwards to downplay the situation, pointing out in a June '93 Chicago Tribune interview that gambling is actually encouraged by virtually all state governments because it supports higher education, lower education, senior citizens, and so on and so forth. Basically, it was bull. Eventually, in the fall of 1993, the league once again concluded that they had no reason to sanction Jordan over his gambling habits. But by that time, MJ had already announced his retirement. And a lot of people still believe the urban legend that says Jordan's first retirement was actually a secret suspension over his reckless gambling habits. Believe it or not, this is just the tip of the iceberg that is Michael Jordan's life as a gambler. There's so many other stories. One time in the early 90s, Jordan and the Bulls were waiting around for the luggage at the Portland airport, and Jordan bet his teammates that his bags would come out first. Obviously, the odds were stacked against Jordan, so several guys took the bet. What they didn't know, but probably should have assumed, was that Jordan had bribed the baggage handlers to make sure his bags came out first. There's another great story from former Chicago Bull Jason Williams. Williams never played with Michael Jordan, but he says guys who did told him that MJ would bet as much as $100,000 on games of rock, paper, scissors.
I used to have dudes on our team who would mess around with MJ. You know what I'm saying? Now you 100 grand. He like, yo, bet it back, rock, paper, scissors.
Then there's the one from Charles Barkley, who claims to have incurred some pretty insane gambling losses of his own over the years. Barkley says he once saw Jordan bet $300,000 on a single putt.
He's like, pick that up, Charles, get out of my way. You in my line. I said, well, how much is that putt for? He's like, $300,000. I said, let me get out of your line.
Oh yeah, Michael Jordan loves to gamble, but what about the womanizing? In 2006, Jordan reached a record-setting $168 million divorce with his first wife, Juanita. At that time, Jordan was known to have had extramarital affairs with at least 2 women, because both of them had filed unsuccessful paternity suits. But they weren't the only women Jordan cheated with. According to a 2010 story by Wright Thompson for ESPN the magazine, Michael Jordan was the one who taught Tiger Woods how to pick up chicks. That same year, John Merchant, a former lawyer and advisor to Tiger Woods, basically blamed Jordan for Tiger's infamous downfall. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Merchant recalled warning Tiger to stay away from that son of a bitch, in reference to Michael Jordan. Of course, Jordan was way more careful than his protege Tiger Woods. Jordan allegedly once told a former Bulls assistant coach that he tried to help Tiger, but the kid was an idiot and was gonna get caught. Jordan supposedly hired 4 former cops to vet his side chicks and make sure they weren't gonna talk. Women had to get approved by all 4 before they got anywhere close to Jordan. But while Michael Jordan was generally pretty methodical about his philandering, he did let his guard down sometimes, like when there was some competition. According to another rumor attributed to a Bulls assistant, Scottie Pippen was exceptionally popular with the ladies everywhere. One of the women who loved Pippen was Madonna. She would send a limo to pick up Pippen every time the Bulls were in LA, and it drove Jordan crazy. So Jordan allegedly tried to convince Madonna that he could satisfy her better than Pippen. But apparently Madonna would tell Jordan, not a chance. During his career, most casual fans had no idea what Michael Jordan was really like in real life, when he wasn't winking at the camera to sell sneakers and Big Macs. But insiders in the sports and entertainment industry were certainly aware of his reputation. And that brings us to his encounter with Kennedy. The year was 1995. MTV still played music videos and alternative rock was huge. Wait, MTV played music videos? Kennedy had gotten her start as an intern at an LA radio station in 1990. In 1992, at the age of 20, she was hired by MTV, where she started out hosting the late-night progressive rock show 120 Minutes. At the age of 23, Kennedy had taken over hosting duties on the primetime show Alternative Nation. Kennedy was simultaneously MTV's biggest on-air personality and its most divisive. Some people loved her irreverent, sexy geek shtick. Other people hated it. Kennedy was a loose cannon who said and did whatever the hell she wanted. Once, she simulated oral sex on a microphone while standing next to New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. As for her interviews, they were usually unpolished and at times downright unprofessional, but they were also entertaining. In 1996, at the world premiere of the first Mission Impossible movie, Kennedy asked Hollywood legend Martin Landau why he was there. Landau proceeded to scold her on live TV for not knowing that he was in the original Mission Impossible TV show. It was fantastic television. Kennedy's run-in with Michael Jordan was an accident, however. She and fellow MTV personality / supermodel Veronica Webb decided to hit up the Bowery Bar on Manhattan's Lower East Side one night in 1995. They didn't know Jordan would be there, but once they were there, it wasn't long before they were part of MJ's entourage. The 2 women had no idea how weird their night would be. According to Kennedy, MJ wasn't paying much attention to her that evening. He was instead focused on flirting with Webb, and who could blame him, besides maybe his wife. But Kennedy had a secret weapon up her sleeve. She knew about Jordan's love of gambling, and she decided to exploit his weaknesses. Kennedy suggested that they shoot some dice, and Jordan suddenly took an interest in her. Her plan worked.
Michael Jordan and I were playing dice one night, and I was losing a little bit. I was worried that I was gonna have to give him money.
But Kennedy soon realized she was in over her head. Not long after the dice game started, Jordan announced that it was, quote, time to play for something. And because he realized playing for tens of thousands of dollars was out of the question, with a 23-year-old media personality, he came up with a better wager. The Indecent Proposal? If Jordan won, Kennedy would come back to his hotel room.
He said, baby, if I win, you come with me to my hotel room.
Jordan didn't actually say what they'd do in his hotel room, but Kennedy naturally assumed that it would probably have something to do with putting some balls in some holes. Obviously, this was an insane situation. Jordan was 33 years old, married, and had 3 kids. And there he was, shooting dice to get a 23-year-old woman to sleep with him. But what Michael didn't know, and what makes this story even crazier, is that Kennedy was a virgin at the time.
I still had the delicate
The V card.
section, the V card. Yeah,
Right.
I had not yet punched the V card.
Seriously, unbeknownst to pretty much everyone, Kennedy, the alt-rock VJ who supposedly hooked up with the likes of Dave Navarro and Trent Reznor, who filleted a microphone while standing next to a mayor, was in fact a conservative Republican who was saving herself for marriage. When Michael Jordan started putting on the full court press, she started to panic, and it turns out her imagination was pretty graphic. She worked under the assumption that Michael Jordan was the owner of the meat show. Kennedy says she worried that MJ would, quote, eviscerate me from the inside out, end quote, and, quote, fillet my vagina like a sea bass. Seriously, those are the actual words Kennedy used in her 2013 book, The Kennedy Chronicles. Fortunately for Kennedy, there was no filleting. She proposed to Jordan that instead of shooting dice for her virginity, they play for floor seats to the Knicks. At that point, Jordan immediately cooled off and pointed out he was married, as though she had been the one propositioning him. Then he suggested they play for floor seats to the Knicks. The moment had passed. Kennedy would go on to win the game. Jordan paid up, and she took Veronica Webb to the Nets game.
And he said, but if you win, you can have Nets tickets.
And so you got the Nets ticket.
I got the Nets tickets.
Right. Well, you know, you
But I
take
played
what
the
you get.
game. I played through.
In the end, Michael Jordan's encounter with Kennedy amounted to a whole lot of nothing. But it wasn't because MJ didn't try. And when it came to gambling and women, MJ always tried.